Thanks so much. So yeah, the title here is a little bit spicy, but what we're gonna do is pretty foundational stuff. So if you're an early stage founder, most likely you are in charge of a lot of your marketing. This talk is intended to help, teach you some actual basic skills. So it's not gonna be as spicy as the title implies. But yeah, fuck memes, or why you need a marketing strategy. So to get into it, this is what we're gonna cover today. Brief introduction, a little bit about like what actually is marketing, right? It's kind of ill-defined because it's quite broad. And then something I like to call the founder's dilemma, marketing foundations, and then time for questions. So before we get into it, hi, I'm Claire Kart. I lead marketing right now at RISC. I have been in Web3 kind of as like a community member since 2011 and as a professional since 2017. So I've worked with a ton of early stage founders, whether that be as an advisor, like an investor or board member, or an actual operator inside of a company. And the talk today is really geared towards like what I see as these common problems that founders face, common misunderstandings that they have, and then some actual tools that I think can help support you on your journey to taking your product to market. So, these talks generally tend to be super, super technical. We're gonna use a little bit of a different side of our brain, and then you're gonna go home with some homework. Up here is my Twitter. I really love connecting with early stage founders. I will follow you back and DM you, so if you have questions, like I really am a practitioner out there trying to make marketing better in Web3. So I'm super happy to connect with any of you. This is not a shill to follow me on Twitter. It's more just like I really do love to know who's listening to my talks, and if you have marketing questions and I can help answer them, I'd be more than happy to do that. All right, so like what is marketing, right? And the reason why I put this up, it seems so basic, but my first conversation with founders is always like, they're panicked, right? They see all this marketing, they don't know how much it costs, people are pitching them like these crazy agency retainers, and they don't know what to do, they feel lost. I think when we break it down, like marketing shouldn't be intimidating, right? Yes, it's been around for a really long time. Yes, it's a very deep discipline. There are people who get their PhDs in different facets of marketing, right? Just like tech. But at its core, it's really just like creating and sustaining a market for a product or service. So it's pretty simple. In Web3, like it's activated across like different channels and certain strategies. Obviously, if you go to another industry, marketing is gonna look totally differently, so it adapts based on whatever the industry is. And if you wanna read more, I will share this deck after, and there's like kind of a long thing on my thoughts on marketing, which you might find interesting. But let's talk about a little bit of a history. So the photo you see up here is actually like an illustration of the old bazaar in Istanbul, but there's also an old bazaar in Belgrade. So marketing started out in these like ancient marketplaces, right? Places where people would actually go to sell and buy goods. And you have this kind of vibe of like social, lively, competitive, customers are interacting with the people who are selling it, the people who are making it. And they're going through this very traditional marketing process of becoming aware of the product, then doing some kind of investigation, trying to become more educated, going through their consideration phase, and then ultimately becoming a customer and then maybe a repeat customer, right? So we see like the modern marketing funnel working in these early markets. And if we go to today, this is a crypto conference, but it kind of looks like an ancient bazaar, right? It's social, it's lively, it's competitive, it's the same thing. People are walking around, they're talking to people, they're trying to become aware, educated, and then make a purchase decision, and then maybe become a repeat customer. So in many ways, like the marketing that we do every day in Web3, you could say it goes back like 8,000 years. It's really old, but there's this other aspect, which is this mess. So yes, marketing fundamentals are there, but early stage founders face this very fragmented, very global, very 24/7 environment that they have to navigate. This is really, really challenging. Which conference do you go to? Which hacker house do you sponsor? Which podcast do you try to go on? Which platform do you prioritize, right? A year ago it was Mastodon, it's X, it's Farcaster. You're one person, maybe you have a small team. How do you build a strategy so that you can tackle this very challenging landscape? So this is what I like to call the Web3 founder's dilemma. And these are real numbers. No, I'm just kidding, they're not, they're made up. But 0% of Web3 founders are marketers. okay? Someone's gonna see this talk and then tell me they're a Web3 founder that's a marketer. I'd love to meet you, that's awesome. Most folks are not, right? Most folks are technical, they're engineers, they're builders. 100% of those folks need to do marketing. So this is a huge gap and it's a huge dilemma. And when you're that one person, you haven't hired your team yet, you have to do it all yourself. So my recommendation is have a plan, because most founders kind of fall on the spectrum, right? There's sort of two types of Web3 founders. And like I said, I don't hate memes. I actually love memes. I made these memes because memes are great at communication. But if we just rely on memes, you know, you're gonna kind of end up spinning your wheels, right? Because memes are actually like kind of hard because they're actually the best form of marketing. But let's get into the two types of founders. So first, we have what I like to call the degen reply guy. He thinks marketing is really good and that hype is the best. On Twitter all day, in every conversation. You might think this is good, but in 3 months and 6 months, that person is exhausted, and they wonder, like, the attention that I got, was it the right attention, or people actually adopting my product? They don't know. And the problem is, it's 24/7 and it's global, so do you just keep doing that indefinitely? That's not a marketing strategy. Then you have the other type of founder, who I like to call the professor. This person is deeply technical. They think the best communication is like a 80-page white paper. And, you know, they're just sitting around. They're waiting for the perfect tweet. They got to think about it. And that's okay, too. But the problem with that is the market's moving really fast. No one's waiting for you to think of your tweet. And so if your whole strategy is like, I'm going to communicate like a researcher, you might be missing out on users. And this person stays up at night thinking, why don't I get invited to the right conferences? Why am I not on the right stages? Why do people not talk about my product? Why do people not know what I'm building? Because what they're building probably is really cool, and there are probably people who want to read their white paper, but they don't have a marketing strategy. No one knows about what they're building. So you're probably somewhere in here, right? Most people are not the total reply guy or the professor, but these are two common types I see all the time when I meet with founders, is they either like cannot send a tweet because, you know, it's not thoughtful enough, or they feel like they need to send every single one. And what I always tell them is, let's take a pause, let's build a marketing strategy, and then put it into place to help you kind of grow, you know, your voice online and help you actually do your marketing. So this might seem intimidating if you're an early stage founder, but you can totally do this, right? You're going from this process of like, you're not thinking about marketing, you're just building. It's early, maybe you're building your protocol, maybe you're building your proof of concept, maybe you're just trying to get investors on board with your idea. You don't need to do marketing. That's totally fine. Then you kind of enter this phase where you're like, well, I know I need to do marketing. My investors have told me, I'm thinking about it, but I'm feeling just worried. I don't know where to step in, right? Do I just tweet all the time? Like, what do I do? Now you're here, you're attending the talk, right? So you're on the journey. And then next we're gonna get into some taste of how to build your marketing strategy. You know, to come in front of a room of, I don't know, like 50 awesome founders, I can't help you all build your marketing strategy right here, right? This is something that's a little custom, it's one-on-one, it's based on your business. But what I hope is that some of these templates can just be powerful tools that you come back to when you're ready, and that this talk gives you a taste of how a professional marketer, how a CMO would approach things if they were at your project, advising you, helping you. So before we kind of get into the templates, curious, just like a show of hands, how many people in here are like a Web3 founder? Good amount of people. How many people are like working at early stage projects and they're facing these challenges about marketing? More people, cool, okay, and to the rest of you, hi. All right, cool, so this is the QR code to my marketing templates. This is actually something I'm like actively building out. I had a first version and I'm kind of reversioning it. But if you go here, you'll see a lot of my templates. I actually have on deck for this week to like upload a bunch more. Like I said, I retooled some of them. But basically, when we think about marketing, you know, that slide I showed with like the crazy landscape of all the icons, we can boil this down into something that you can definitely approach. So it's really about thinking about the 5 W's. And here I feel like my second grade teacher, right? Like I feel like in elementary school, they're always telling you, okay, it's about the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why. But if you boil it down to something that simple, it really is effective because those are the questions you need to answer in order to market to your audience. So the two that I want to give you a little taste of, and again, it's just a taste. First is what I call essence. This is the who of your project. Who are you, and who does your company want to be? And I think this question is a little weird to ask because it's like, what do you mean who? It's about what we're building. Yes, it is about what you're building, but if your brand has an inconsistent voice in the market, if you don't know who you are, you're going to miss the opportunity to talk to your audience, and a lot of your marketing is going to be kind of all over the place and very confused. So while it feels a little weird to ask who is your company, it's actually a super powerful tool and kind of a fun exercise because it's also creative. Then we'll get into positioning, which is the what. This is what all of you, I think, might be a little bit more comfortable with. This is what the founders I work with are usually more comfortable with. This is oh yeah, I'm building a DA solution, it's cheaper, it's this, it's that. This is kind of the what, right? But it's the what in a really structured way that will help you approach it as an exercise. The other ones are also in there as worksheets if you want to do them. The where, this is just where do you place your message, right? Do you spend all your time on Farcaster? Do you spend it all on Twitter? Do you not spend any time on social? You just go to conferences? What does this look like for you? What does making a plan look like for you? Timing, when. Our industry is really driven by conferences, so, understanding the time to put your message in market is very important. And then lastly, the why. This is the messaging piece. So, given everything you're working on, it's really cool. Great. A lot of people are working on a lot of things. Why should anyone care about you? And this can be a hard question to answer because I think a lot of founders are well, they're very invested in what they're building, but the people who you're selling to are not invested in what you're building yet. And through this process, you get them invested in what you're building. All right, so this is word salad, but this is the typical exercise I would take a founder or founding team through when talking about brand essence. You can look up here, there's some words that are that's kind of a weird word, I don't know, cute. Cute is up here. But there's a lot of descriptive words. This is a pretty well-used template in marketing circles. And if you go into the templates, it kind of steps you through it almost like a worksheet, right? About how do you actually do this with your team, with founders that you work with and support. But it's a really fun exercise. What you do is you get a bunch of people in a room. You get people who really have some sense of ownership or cultural buy-in to the project. And you kind of just present these words to them and let them have fun with them and leave it a little bit open. It's like an open door, right? And just put the challenge out to them, which of these words seem to relate to our project and how? And you get people talking, record it, take notes, do whatever you may, but use these words as a conversation starter. So, one founder might come and say, I don't know, where's a word in here that I've seen a lot of founders want to talk about? Elegant. Okay, I'm going to go all the way in the middle column up there, elegant. So elegant might sound a little elegant, okay. But a lot of us are working in math, in cryptography, right? And the idea of elegant mathematics is very appealing to some founding teams. They founded their solution because they thought other solutions were clunkier and they wanted to do something really elegant with the math that they were using, turn it into code and create an elegant solution. So you just don't know what's going to resonate with your founding team, but this exercise helps really pull it out, right? And then you're going to have words where people are that word has nothing to do with what we're building, and that's an opportunity for conversation too. So you kind of say okay, tell me more about why that has nothing to do with our company. And you'll learn a lot through how they don't define themselves. So, there's some obvious ones up here, right? Romantic is up here. I hope no one's company feels they're romantic. Maybe you do, I don't know. But there's other ones that might be a little bit, I don't know, practical. Practical's up there, right? Some founders might be no, my solution isn't practical. It's for big brains only. It's super deep tech. There's only 5 people in the world who will understand it. Whatever it may be, they might not feel it's practical. So you go through this exercise of using this as a way to have a conversation with founders to uncover really the essence and soul and emotions of the project that you're building. It's a little bit hard to keep stepping you through it verbally. I think if you go to my templates, you'll see like it talks you through the workshop. But once you get these words, you also lead a session around storytelling, right? Like you might say to one of the founders or CEOs, like, tell me a story about your childhood that's connected into what you're building today. And you're going to hear like amazing stories about where their passion and drive comes from, why this is meaningful to them. You want to pull those stories forward so you can start to create this brand essence that will help you stand out in the market. All right, so essence, very, very fun, very creative. I'll say on a personal note, the few founders that I've done this with recently, at the end of it have like literally been brought to tears because their feeling is that like they really feel like someone sees them, right? They've worked so hard to build this thing, and the thing now has a personality. And that personality you can build off of it into, well, what does the brand look like? Like, what are the visuals of this brand? And then how does this brand talk, right? Is it authoritative? Is it friendly? Is it understanding? Is it funny? Is it rude? Like, is it all Pepe memes or is it some other type of brand, right? And those are the questions you can begin to answer with this exercise. Okay, so shifting gears, this is the positioning exercise. Again, this is like maybe several hours and then like a day or two of work afterwards to come up with the end result, but this can give you a taste of how to do positioning. So this is like, if you go to school and study marketing, this is the image you'll see most frequently when you're talking about actual like commercial marketing, right? Like how to take something to market. And that's because this is the underpinning not just of marketing strategy, but really like all of commercial strategy. Some of this might already be in your head. If you can answer these questions right now, like good for you. I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. Most people struggle a little bit because they have to make choices, right? So let's go through the example. For Web3 developers, that's the target audience. Best chain, I made that up, is the roll-up as a service that is the easiest to use so they can get to market fast with hosted support, easy integrations, and low overhead. This is a super concise, tidy thing that you can come to again and again when you're like, what exactly are we building? And this will inform everything from how you communicate about yourselves to like how you build your product, right? Let's say an engineer comes to you and they're like, hey, I had this amazing breakthrough. But then you're like, okay, but this isn't going to help people get to market fast. So even though it's an amazing breakthrough, maybe we need to pass on it, right? I don't know the answer to that, but the point is all Web3 founders have really limited resources. Like you're so overworked, you're tired, you have way too many things on your plate. So what tools can help you focus on what's really gonna move the needle for your business? The other thing here I think that is like a pretty common pitfall is the target, the audience. Generally, when I meet with founders, they tell me, I ask them, who needs to know about your product? And they tell me, everyone. Everyone needs to know about my product. Okay, everyone. That's a really big task, right? And as a marketer, what I think is people don't learn about things for free. It takes time and money and effort. So if your answer to me is everyone, that's gonna cost a lot of money and a lot of time. And seed stage founders, pre-seed founders, they don't have that time and money. So if you can get super focused on who you're for, you'll be much more effective in getting traction with whatever you're building. This is kind of generalized Web3 developers. You're gonna wanna click down into that, right? Like, what languages do they work in? Maybe what geographies are they in? What are some of their interests? Maybe what are their backgrounds, right? Like, were they working in DevOps before? Were they working, I don't know, are they part of the RISC community? Like, who are these people that you're trying to reach? And once you find that and kind of memorialize it in this, you can be a lot more focused in your, not just marketing efforts, but all of your commercial efforts. Okay, again, if you go to the template, tons more info. I hope this was a good taste of what this can do. And then lastly, I can't do a whole talk about marketing up here. It's like a huge, huge field, and I thought, let me focus more on the practical parts. But these are just some reminders. Do your own research doesn't just apply to crypto trading and investing. It also applies to doing marketing. Understand your audience as much as you can. There's great resources out there like the Electric Capital Developer Report that actually provides real numbers about which communities of developers are growing, what they're working on. So there's, compared to 5 years ago in Web3, there's a lot more data and information now that you can really use to supercharge your marketing efforts. Number 2, content is still king. If you approach marketing as like, let me be helpful to my users, they have problems, let me solve them, your content will be super successful and drive a ton of value for your business. 20x, this is the one founders have the hardest time with. If you are not tired of your own message, you haven't said it enough. So when people come to me and they're like, I don't want to put that in the blog again, we say it all the time. Yeah, that's the point. You need to say it all the time because no one's paying attention to your project like you are. They're paying attention to their life. So until someone hears something 20 times, it's not really going to penetrate and stick with them. So I'll just say it one more time. If you are not sick of your own message, you're not saying it enough. The person I love to reference here is Nick White. Like, take a shot every time he says modular, right? You'll be drunk. And I think he's a great example of like, stick to the message and say it many times, and then you can get traction and it'll be effective. And you can go beyond that. You can be more detailed, you can be more nuanced, but help kind of bring the audience along and give them that message that really sticks in their mind. 4, know your users a little too well. People are more likely to engage with you if what you're sharing is relevant. How do you learn if it's relevant? You have to know the person. When you're at conferences, like, get to know your users. It might sound really simple, but a lot of founders, they're concerned with like numbers. Like, well, how many views did the blog post get? That's good, but what's more important at the early stage is like, do you know who they are? Do you know what problems you're solving for them? Do you know what kind of music they like to listen to? Like, you should really know them as people, and your marketing will get so much better. More is not always better, and that's because early founders are super strapped for time, and they're really thinly stretched. So I'll go back to the marketing strategy. Have a marketing strategy. If you don't, you're just going to be doing more and more and more, and you're going to get really tired, and in 6 months, you're going to say, you know what? I'm tired of marketing. It's not driving any results for my business. I don't have time for it anymore. And then your whole project is in a bad situation. So don't burn yourself out. And then lastly, DND your users. A huge number of users just turn off notifications. They unsubscribe because you're bugging them. Make sure all your communications are like super respectful of their time, really relevant, right? Don't email your whole marketing list that's users from all over the world that you're doing something in Belgrade, right? It's a little tough. Most of them are probably not in Belgrade, right? Because they're global, crypto is global. So you have to think a little bit about, how do I continue to build a relationship where people want to continue to engage with the message that I'm putting out? Okay, so yeah, this is my favorite phrase, let's GTM, right? GM and let's GTM. I am super grateful to have had the opportunity to give this talk. If you message me, I'll definitely respond. I love connecting with early stage founders. And lastly, I just wanted to thank the organizers. I was telling my team earlier, but I have applied to give this talk like many times over the course of 4 years. And I think most stages are technical, so I couldn't find a place to give the talk, but I felt strongly that founders could benefit from it. I'd love to hear your feedback on if it was good or bad, but all that's to say, thank you all so much for watching my talk. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I'm very pleased I got the opportunity, and just thanking the creators of ETH Belgrade for that. So thank you all so much.
Oh my God, what a session, guys. Honestly, Claire, you know what's interesting? I'm a marketer myself, and I learned so many new things on your discussion there. And really, I think, guys, somebody must have a question, because I've got a couple questions myself, actually. So what I think is great about what you said is this space is really teed up perfectly for people coming on board with those marketing techniques. What do you think is the biggest mistake that brands are making today? Because at the end of the day, they have to be noticed, but they also have to have something consistent and grow the community through the marketing techniques. So what do you think are the biggest problems that brands are coming across in the Web3 space?
I think the biggest problem brands are facing is they're copying everyone else. And I understand why. It's hard to know what good marketing looks like. There are some moments in the last few months that have been kind of viral, And I think those are great, but if everyone just tries to do that, then all of a sudden it's not differentiated. So if you go back to like, who is your brand and what are you building, build your marketing off of that, and kind of build this long-term relationship with your users, you'll have way more success than people who kind of blip up for, you know, a day on Twitter. Yeah, don't be distracted by the shiny objects.
Yeah, and just following up on that, because I'm really stealing you here, because you're not just giving an amazing session, but really tangible solutions. And I'm sure there's a few founders in here that were really taking notes, taking photos. And I think that's really important, is to actually offer ways that you can build your brand as a non-marketer. And something that I always come across with people, and I love what you did with the memes there, you know, going all the way back to Richard Dawkins and the, you know, the book, the fact that the memes go back to 1976. The amazing thing about memes and meme culture today is that they really do transcend those language barriers of today. You know, anyone around the world can understand the message. And speaking of that, what do you think is an important balance of sort of more, I would say, sort of trending, happy, kind of funny content, and also serious marketing techniques? Like, what's your good balance on that side of things?
Yeah, sure. So before I got into Web3, I was in more like a traditional fintech startup, right? And you know, we had a P&L to manage, so we had like very disciplined marketing practices. Kind of the rule of thumb is 80% of your marketing should be like solid planned marketing, right? It's stuff you planned in advance. 20% of it can be responding to a meme, responding to a trend. And of course, like sometimes it's 70-30, sometimes it's 60-40, sometimes it's 90-10. But if you stay focused on that 80-20, you're building your strong foundation, really strategic. And then, you know, you have moments where you're testing and responding to things. And of course, like once you see if that sticks, you want to keep going, right? Like maybe Pepe memes are the right thing for your brand. I don't know. You can experiment and you can see. Yeah, so 80-20.
I love that. And I think, like you said, getting the balance is important, because especially for DeFi projects, maybe slightly different for NFT projects, they can go all out, meme crazy. But, you know, for more, you know, I would say finance-aligned brands, it's important to not kind of become a gimmick. And speaking of that, actually, what, for example, I'm sure this will be my last question, I promise you, I'm stealing you here. For the founders in the room, what's the easiest way to start? For example, I have a technique I use, I like to call them content calendars, sort of content banking, all of these content pillars that you have for your brand, and then coming to that and obviously revisiting it and optimizing it, because like we know, not every campaign works, and it's all about sort of cutting and pasting. And what's sort of maybe a tangible solution that you use? Could be the content calendar, ways that you build that for some of the founders that are listening today.
Yeah, so there's a lot of tools out there. As you probably know, they kind of range from like free Google Sheets, which, you know, don't sleep on Google. It's like a great product, right? I've also seen people really successfully do it in Notion. I'm not a Notion power user, but I know a lot of people who like it, and there are a lot of free templates. And then there's some great like enterprise software tools. So one I really like that I've been using lately is called Assembly. I actually discovered it like a couple months ago, and it's my new go-to because it does a lot of content management and approvals. So I think it just depends. Like, don't get a solution that's too big for where you're at right now, because you won't know how to use it and you won't invest time in it. So if you're just starting on Google Sheets, like, be excited, color code it, do all the things to make it feel like a great tool for you, and go with that.
Amazing. And I think it's so important you said that the freemium version is always the one you go to first. And for founders that are bootstrapping their agents or their new projects, I think it's important to know it's not necessarily about spending lots of money on marketers. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's people like you and I that are there to support them, but it's actually just about doing it themselves first, finding their own kind of route to the brand that they're building. And I think that's really important that you said that. We're not saying go out there and spend money on marketers. We're saying go out there and see what the space is and where your brand wants to be in the future. And I just want to say, guys, from me, that's probably one of my favorite sessions of this last couple of days. So massive round of applause for Claire, guys. Whoa, amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to see you backstage, okay? We have another session before we have a break. However, we are 10 minutes ahead, guys. Oh, we have a question. Please, sir. Oh, Claire, we have a question. I'm so sorry. I didn't see you.
Hey, sorry. It's really, it's like bright lights, literally.
I'll be quick, I promise. Yeah, it was great talk. Thank you a lot. I also have another question, kind of in balance, from a range of not communicating enough, but only saying super relevant things, and communicating too much, but regularly in a way that platforms like. What's a good cursor? Where do, like, is one of them acceptable, or I guess it's in the middle somewhere, but what do you think?
Yeah, sure. So, I think there's a lot of talk in, especially like Twitter and digital marketing about like, oh, the algorithm likes this and the algorithm likes that. That's true. I will say though, the algorithm's always changing. We have no insight into it. It's a complete like black box. There's people who try to like back-end hack it by running experiments, and then, there's all these marketing blogs about like, I ran this experiment and I think the algorithm wants this. My advice to most founders is like, build your strategy and do what feels right and sustainable for you long term. I think there's no reasonable way to like hack your way into building an audience. I mean, maybe if 100 people do it, like 5 of them will be successful, but then 95% of them are gonna fail. So I don't advise my founders to be like, that's too risky, right? That's too much of your time to potentially fail. So yeah, I think to answer your question, it's like somewhere in the middle. If you're never communicating and every communication has to be like 6 months of writing and revision, that's just not gonna work for our industry. On the other hand, if you're like literally waking up in the middle of the night and checking Twitter and trying to tweet, you're just gonna get really burnt out. So find something in the middle where like you have short form communications on Twitter, you have like medium form communications, and then you have more long form communications. And if you do that mix where you're like engaging, getting people interested, helping them assess, and then helping them actually make their purchase decision, like you'll be successful and you won't burn out, which is, I think, the most important thing. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Maybe a tricky question, or maybe something you've heard of a bunch of times. So Web3, especially DeFi, has a lot of sort of issues with, well, I think it's much harder at Web2 because of the anonymity, the inherent anonymity, and like I feel it's very hard to figure out what your user group is, or like who is actually using your product or protocol or dApp. Do you have any tips and tricks for figuring out who these addresses on the blockchain actually are?
Yeah, okay, so when I hear that question, I think of it in 2 different ways. You and I can talk afterwards if maybe the answer I'm giving is not the way you're asking it. I think one about something that in marketing we call attribution, right? So attribution in traditional marketing is like, he clicked on a link and now he bought it, and I can attribute that to a display ad, right? So you want to attribute your marketing spend. The other thing that I think of is just like understanding a user journey and understanding like who are these users, right? So I think on the attribution part, I don't work kind of on that side of crypto, but I know there are some tools that you can do for on-chain attribution. Can't think of them right now, but I can go look them up. And then on kind of like the user journey and understanding your user piece, this is really hard. I think the thing that I would recommend that you do that I've had the most success with in telling founders about is like, you could literally tweet like, hey, I wanna do 10 customer interviews. Can you get in touch if you use my product? And it seems so simple, but like, people will reach out to you, and don't set any incentives for them. Like, just ask them for their time. If they're really passionate about what you're building, they'll give it. And then from there, you can start to kind of understand them more from like a audience profiling point of view, right? Like, who are they? What are they interested in? What other projects are they involved in? All of that stuff that might let you like communicate to them better. So yeah, I don't know which part you were asking about, maybe somewhere in between, but find me afterwards and we can talk about it more. Oh, okay, great. Marketing
Hello.
questions, I love it.
Hey, do you think that being a reply guy is a good way to market yourself and also build the initial community around your brand?
I think it can be. That's gonna be my answer for most of this, right? It could also be okay to be the professor, but it really depends. I think the reason why I pulled those 2 examples out is when I meet with founders, they're not thinking about a marketing strategy. They're just being who they are. And that's not a criticism, but like maybe you're a reply guy, right? Then you go to found a company, and then you're like the company reply guy. You just have to wonder, like, is this driving the marketing results that I want? The answer might be yes. Like, the answer might be, I'm seeing tremendous results from this. But what I don't want is a founder who isn't a reply guy to try to be a reply guy because they think they should. then they end up just feeling like tired, they're not making progress, and then they don't want to invest in marketing. So I think the answer is, if you build your strategy, if you understand who are our users, what are we selling to them, how do we want to show up, and then you try to match things with that, you'll have more success than, kind of just like doing the thing that maybe seems more obvious. Yeah. I'll also say too, so I work more on the infrastructure side of crypto, so the founders I work with tend to be like mathematicians, and for a lot of them, they're just never gonna be a reply guy. They don't want to, it feels icky to them, they don't like it, they don't communicate that way, and so the reason why I bring this up is just to say, neither one is right. There's a spectrum of ways you can show up online, tie it into your strategy, and you'll have more success, because you meet technical founders and they're like, well, I can never be Anatoly, I can never be Mert, so I'm just not gonna say anything. I mean, that's not the right answer, right? So I think this is something that early founders struggle with, emotionally, they don't know what to do. It's really a hard thing for them. Thanks for your question.
That's great. We're back on time now.
Okay.
One more.
Sounds good.
That's the last one, guys. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, did I jump in line?
Hi.
Hi. It's kind of a two-part question. You mentioned long-term, what feels good long-term, just slightly earlier. So the first part is, what does long-term even mean when we sort of have this joke that in crypto, in a month or two, you experience a year, 2 or 3 or whatever. And so what does building for long-term marketing mean when the space obviously changes so quick, when life changes so quick, when your business changes so quick? And the next part to that is, with all the options that we have, let's say obviously smaller companies or startups, with all the different, I'm thinking primarily now about social media channels or any sort of community building channel, whether it be Twitter or whether it be Discord or whatever it might be, we can't be everywhere, and we probably don't really want to be everywhere. So how do we balance where we need to be now, I guess, versus where to, for lack of a better phrase, what we would say in English, skating to where the puck is going to be, so to speak? Mm-hmm. My audience is here now, so I need to be here. Is it on Twitter, or do I need to be, no, the growth is happening on Telegram. I need to be building my community on Telegram, but also need to reach out to people on Discord. Just wondering how you feel about it. It's a lot of questions I squeezed in, but thank you.
Yeah, it's all good. I want to be respectful of the next speaker, so I'll be a little bit brief, but then I'll be out in the hallway. We can talk more. So to first question of long-term, I mean, there's different ways to think about this, right? One could be your funding horizon. How much runway do you have, right? That could be your long-term. I'm self-funding. I have 3 months to do this. So what does that mean? What are you going to do in these 3 months? What can you do to sustain it? If that means you are going to send every tweet you can, and that's your strategy because you have 3 months and you want to try to see if you can get some traction, that's cool. I support you. You've thought about it, right? If your runway is 3 years, I think trying to tweet 24/7, you're probably going to run out of steam. So there's kind of one lens of what's your kind of runway, and then there's the other thing, which is market cycles and trends. I think, again, I work in infrastructure in crypto, right? So the market cycles tend to be a little bit more, they're a little longer horizon. I don't work in NFTs, for example, which, I mean, it's these crazy rides. I don't envy anyone who works in that. I think it looks so hard as a marketer. So I think it just depends kind of on which part of marketing and crypto you're working in. But what I would say is even for an NFT project, if you really know who you are, you're going to take it to market more successfully. And whether your horizon is 1 week or 1 month or 10 years, doing these things, really knowing who you are, who you're for, how you're going to talk, will help you find your users versus okay, I'm just going to talk to all users, right? Because talking to all users is really expensive. Okay. Good. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Claire, this is really awesome. I'm a marketer myself, and I recently got into Web3 about a year and a half ago.
Welcome.
2 years ago. Thank you.
We need way more of you.
Yes, thank you.
Come on stage next year.
Yes. My question is specifically if you have any take on copywriting, because we obviously know that in Web2 copywriting is huge. It's how people get to engage, to understand things. In Web3, however, it seems like a lot of what is needed is technical writers and people who speak grade 13 level writing, which, to be honest, does not help with mass adoption. Or more with investors, really. So do you have any predictions, or what's your opinion on specifically copywriting in the Web3 marketing world?
Yeah, okay, this is a great question. This is actually one of those, like, it keeps me up at night questions. So yeah, there's a lack of technical writers in Web3, which is like a huge issue, right? We need more people who can technically write about it if we're going to onboard developers. Then you think about, okay, well, how do we onboard users? Copywriting is so fundamental. I think most teams don't have enough resources to have a dedicated copywriter, right? Most teams in crypto are pre-seed, seed, maybe some A's, and then there's like a handful of Series B companies. Typically in normal kind of like startup tech, you don't get to onboard a copywriter until maybe late A, early B, even seed, depending on what industry you're in. I would say the head of marketing, whoever leads marketing, needs to have certain skills that like you can't really outsource. So good brand skills, good copywriting skills, and like you're kind of doing that job. But like to bring it back to the templates, not to be a broken record, I think, you know, if you go through an exercise of the brand essence, which like you're a marketer, so you're familiar with all that stuff, then you figure out what your tone of voice is, and then you develop some kind of writing guide. You can try to scale this across people in your team because most likely you can't hire a copywriter yet. So yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I have to go. Thank you all.
Oh, a massive round of applause. I think that was the longest session anyone has done this last 2 days, guys. Massive round of applause. Thank you so much, Claire. Absolute pleasure.